Welcome back. Now let's take a look at what's on the front page of the local dailies. First, before we get into our main discussion here, already in studio, as I told you, we have Ngovi Kitau, who is a former ambassador of Kenya to South Korea, already in studio. We want to talk about Kenya's foreign policy as far as this regime is concerned, where we're looking at and where do we stand as a nation. But before then, a quick look at the papers. On the front page of the Standard newspaper, politics of tax suck in the mighty. Politics of tax suck in the mighty. Issues of tax have been part of Kenya's political discourse since independence, and if it is not the incumbent president exhorting Kenyans to pay their fair share, it has been politicians crying foul over weaponization of the instrument by KRA to silence critics. Now it is the country's big three fighting it out. That was also the front page of the Standard here. Uhuru Jayab at Kenya Kwanza. We talk less, but we performed. He was speaking yesterday during the when he visited the late Professor Magoha's family. Junior secondary kicks off amid anxiety on the front page of the Standard. Very quickly, what do we have on the People Daily here? Uhuru defends Jubilee record. Retired president hits out at current leadership and noisemakers, quote unquote, for constantly finding fault with his legacy, including CBC. Digital first as Ruto cabinet holds paperless meeting. That happened yesterday at State House in Nairobi. Raila Chebukati locked in fresh row. Former IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati demands that Azimio leader proves graft allegations against him as Raila calls for a return to manual voting system. And on the Daily Nation, were the 15 billion shillings graft tax cases hotter? Were the 15 billion shillings graft tax cases hotter? We have got a number of people who were accused, and so far their cases so far have been dropped, starting from the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. We have got Mary Mbowe, Purity, and Palmer Holdings, etc., etc. You can take a look at that story. Still on the front page here, focus on service delivery. Uhuru tells Ruto as Simon Magoha. That is on the front page here. Chebukati to Raila, produce video or I'll sue you. Chebukati was speaking through his lawyers. And finally, on the Star newspaper, Ruto allies demand tax audit of Kenyatta farms. Ruto allies demand tax audit of Kenyatta farms. Brookside, NCBA Bank, NK and Safaricom 5G deal among those they want scrutinized. Former President laughs off onslaught, says adversaries are idlers. Again on the front page. That is what's here. Ruto's grand plan to build 263 dams, revive Aror and Kimorer. You can take a look at your favorite local daily for this and more of other story. All right, so get in straight into it. I have in studio Ambassador Ngovi Kitau, who is the first ambassador of Kenya to South Korea already. In studio with me here. We want to talk about Kenya's foreign policy as far as we are as a nation in the new dispensation here in the country. Abalozi, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Victor.
The last time we were here was way back during President Mwai Kibaki's
that's the last time I was here.
Yes.
And we had a very good and useful conversation.
How have you been? So far so good. How have you been?
I've been fine. It's a new year.
Yes.
Both the Gregorian and the lunar new year.
Right.
Which started last Sunday.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a new administration in place. Where do we look at as a nation in terms of our foreign policy?
Well, Kenya's foreign policy has been articulated very well, and we are among the few countries in Africa with more than 50 missions globally. So in that aspect, we are doing well. But what I would like to start with is to give a statement, and this is what I have. That it is important for all Kenyans to realize that for Kenya to engage in effective, consistent, coherent, and constructive dialogue with other countries and international organizations, it is very important for us to have a comprehensive foreign relations policy. And I think that is what I would like to elaborate on, and depending on what you have on your schedule.
We have a new dispensation.
Yeah.
And based on that, Africa or Kenya has a new Foreign Policy Act.
Yeah.
That means that we have to abide by that.
Yes.
How is the new administration going to distinguish between the previous and the current dispensation?
You see, foreign policy has no previous or current because it's a long-term process which requires sustained effort and commitment. And we have to have that commitment as a country, irrespective of which regime is in power. So, what I think the focus should be for Kenya right now is to decide on which interests we want to focus on.
Yes.
There are three normative interests in foreign affairs, in foreign relations. One is political interests. Two is national interests, and three is commercial interests. If you look at the way the world is structured right now, America has pursued national interests since the Second World War. China is focusing more on political interests. They want Africa to support them at the UN level, at multilateral level. But then we have countries like Korea, whose focus on commercial interests. I think Kenya should focus more on our commercial interests, economic diplomacy, and promotion of trade. I think that is the best way for Kenya to go forward. And in that area, then that will require dialogue and engagement with other countries, and especially in areas of integration, like the way we are doing in the African Union.
Yes.
If you look at the Agenda 2063, Kenya should really support that agenda so that we can expand our markets, we can expand our reach, and then we are able to propel our economic growth forward.
Yes. President Ruto's policy is Africa-focused, based kind of policy.
Yeah.
That does affect the global policy?
No, you see, it does not affect the global policy because that's multilateral diplomacy, isn't it?
Yes.
So we have the United Nations, whose focus is on proactively maintaining peace and stability globally. But then we have the African Union, whose focus is protecting Africa's sovereignty. And I don't think there's any conflict. And Ruto's focus on Africa is very important for Kenya, and especially when we look at trade and where Kenya is going. We need to develop a larger market, and that's why we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Yes.
That is so important to us because when we try to reach those markets out there in Europe, there are so many non-tariff barriers as compared to the African market. So I think the focus on the African continent is the right way to go.
And why Africa focused?
You see, Africa is a constellation of many nations, and we are coming from the same subframe. It's easier for us to understand one another. Let's compare that with our entry into Asia or into Europe, and you will see the difference very clearly. You find that when you go to Singapore, to Korea, the culture is different. The thinking is different. But when I go to Uganda or to Tanzania or to Ghana, there is a commonality in our values, in our culture, and it is easier to deal with those people than the outside world.
Ambassador, currently Kenya is led by former President Uhuru Kenyatta, is mediating the peace process in Congo. That shows that Kenya is a big boy in Africa, if not in East and Central Africa. Are we likely to strengthen these kind of bonds that we have with other nations, and why Kenya?
Yeah, the answer is yes. That is coming from the background that we've served our term as a non-permanent member in the UN Security Council. And that gave us two achievements. Number one, as a country, Kenya was given a platform to actively participate in addressing global security challenges, which was very, very important for Kenya. That's an achievement we did. Secondly, as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, that raised our profile and international standing as a key player in regional and international security matters. So I see that continuing. Yeah.
After election, we went through an election which again went to the Supreme Court. How does it portray Kenya globally?
Now, that is a political question, you see.
Yes.
Let us talk about Kenya's image internationally.
Right.
That needs to be managed, and I feel that that is where a comprehensive strategy is required. Our image globally and relatively to our neighbors, Kenya is seen as a relatively stable and peaceful country. And that image needs to be sustained. And our participation in DRC, in Sudan, confirms that we have the capacity and the capability to lead in peace and security in this region. So the elections, despite what happened, keep in mind that we have had instances of political violence in the past, but I don't see that recurring again, because we have learned a lot from that. Because you realize that we moved so far from a single-party system to multi-party to what now is perceived as negotiated democracy.
Yes.
And I think that will help a lot to remove that tainted image in the international community. I would like to add that a lot of that has to do with the way we manage our media. And I feel that when we get to this discussion deeper, I would like us to have an initiative on how the media can be brought on board, and especially through foreign affairs, to articulate what is positive about Kenya. Because our media, on average, reports disasters. And I think that's where you are coming from about the post-election issues,
yes,
which I don't think globally are issues. Yeah.
President William Ruto has visited South Korea. You were the first ambassador of South Korea during your time.
Yeah.
South Korea stands at a very pivotal point in terms of their trade strength and even politically speaking. Why South Korea and not any other country? The last regime was so much leaned towards China.
There's a lot going on between South Korea and Kenya, and a lot has been going on since we formed our diplomatic relations way back, I think it was 27th of February 1964, during the then President Jomo Kenyatta and President Park Chung-hee. And although that relationship did not mature to what we expected, I think right now it's in that direction. And I'll give you an example of the last visit.
Yes.
When President Ruto went to Korea recently, we had a basic agreement, bilateral agreement, where we had a credit line of about $200 million. And that was for the period 2018 to 2020. And that agreement lapsed, and there was no follow-up. But when he went to South Korea, that agreement was revived, and it was enhanced to $1 billion credit line for the period 2023 to 2026, I think. Yeah, so it's looking good.
Yes. And after the election, I mean, the African Union and the EU remained guarded, you know, after the election, which again went to the Supreme Court, and now here we are. Why?
Rephrase that.
The African Union and the EU have remained guarded after the post-election that went to the Supreme Court, and now we have a new regime. Why do you think the two entities remained guarded?
Why are they guarded?
Yes.
I don't think they are. What is your concern here?
Why have they not commented even on the post-election, the processes that Kenya went through?
You see, these are multilateral agencies.
Yes.
And they don't interfere with internal affairs of other countries unless they see a serious threat in security and peace and stability. And I don't think the Kenyan situation went to that extent. They might be quiet because it's too early to comment. There are still a lot of issues going on. There are a lot of negotiations. There are a lot of discussions. And I think it's prudent to wait until the government has settled down. Yeah.
Kenya enjoyed some sense of, of membership in the African UN Security Council.
Yeah.
We enjoyed that.
Yeah, we did.
What does it take?
Sorry?
What does it take?
Well, we were elected. And of course, you are aware that Africa gets some 3 slots in the non-permanent members. And in the last term, Kenya was one of them. And now we have another 3 countries, Gabon, I think, Ghana, and Mozambique. But I said earlier on that that was a very big achievement for Kenya, for giving us that platform to actively participate in addressing global security matters. Yeah, I think it was a very positive thing for Kenya.
And Kenya is considered as a big boy in Africa in terms of security, in terms of conflict resolution. What are we supposed to do as a nation to make sure that we remain to the top in that kind of aspect?
Yeah, I just saw that clip when I was sitting here about Turkana. You were screening it just before I came in, and that shows we still have some fragile regions of Kenya. But I think that problem has been addressed, and it's being addressed. But for Kenya to maintain that status as what you are calling a big boy, there are certain things we need to do. And one of them is intelligence capability. We need to know these things before they happen. We've been caught up unawares with a few instances of terrorism, organized crime, political violence. That should not be happening in Kenya. And I think we need to strengthen our intelligence capability.
Our intelligence capability. We've had Kenyan soldiers together with AMISOM in Somalia for a very long time.
Yeah.
We've had our troops in South Sudan, and right now we have our troops in Congo.
Yeah.
What is the strength of Kenya in terms of conflict resolution?
Kenya is very strong in that area because of long experience. It's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And I think Kenya is one of the few countries in the region who have the capacity to provide troops to these other countries. And that is mainly because of our both economic and national stability.
Yes.
Yes. I don't think we can be compared much in that area.
Let's talk about trade. Ambassador, Kenya exports a lot, and I believe that our tea is one of the best globally.
Yeah.
What do you think that the current regime should do to enhance that and probably keep it at that particular level?
I think our focus right now should be on economic diplomacy and promoting trade and encouraging investments. That is where we have our strength. We've been able to do successful trade in both tea and coffee, in horticulture, but we need to diversify. And for that to happen, we need to strengthen and improve our interagency coordination and cooperation. Because from my experience, that is what is really pulling us down. Because you find that Minister of Foreign Affairs has done so much, and then there is no control tower to coordinate and to harmonize various policies by various MDAs, and then we lose initiative. And I can give you 2 examples on that. The first one was when we signed the bilateral air service agreement between Kenya and South Korea. And we are able to convince Korean Air to offer direct flights to Kenya. But then that was on what we call code sharing without landing rights, meaning that we wanted to protect Kenya Airways. So the flight lands in Nairobi and Kenya Airways takes over from there. It didn't work. And Korean Air asked to withdraw. The second point I want to raise about the interagency and the MDA cooperation is that we were granted market access authorization for bananas and broccoli way back 2018. We haven't shipped even a container up to now, because once the Minister of Foreign Affairs has done that, it goes to another agency. And there is no way Minister of Foreign Affairs can enforce that.
Yes.
So we either restructure, like in some other countries where the international trade export promotion is together with foreign affairs, or we set up a control tower which can harmonize all these MDAs for effective trading.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think Kenya should seek for more partners in terms of their partnerships in the foreign affairs and foreign policy?
Well, everybody in the world is looking for more friends,
yes.
and Kenya is not an exception. We must continue building and maintaining strong partnerships with other countries. Yes.
There is a question of, common currency that has been in the pipeline for a very long time, more so the East Africa, for them to use one currency. Do you think this is feasible? It is possible?
If you look at the protocols integrating the East Africa community, we've achieved the custom union and the free markets. And now we are at the stage of common currency and then political federation. The common currency has been postponed several times.
Yes.
I think it should have happened way back either 2013 or 2014. My view is that we should have done the political federation first before the common currency. Because the fear is we do a common currency, I let go my currency,
yes.
and then the federation doesn't materialize. Then you see there's a problem. And I think that's what's being a real challenge for us. So in my opinion, we should have done the political federation before the common currency.
All right.
Notwithstanding, it has worked well in Central Africa and parts of West Africa.
All right.
They have already done their common currency, and now they are on political federation. Keep in mind that African Union is integrating Africa through 8 formal economic communities, and the East Africa community is one of them. And each community integrates with another one. I think we are on a tripartite right now between East Africa community, COMESA, and SADC. So we are making good progress. Yeah.
And the future looks great for Kenya?
The future for Kenya is very bright. It's very, very bright.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ambassador, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That is Ambassador Ngovi Kitau, who is the former ambassador of Kenya to South Korea. That is Ngovi Kitau. We are taking a quick break. When we come back, we have got EU ambassador who is already in studio. We want to talk about the EU and so much more as far as Kenya relations is concerned. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.